numb at the moment from the past 6 months, but I feel adventuresome. I don't think I'm just going to stop, sit down. I don't necessarily mean singing, or I'm not a lecturer, I'm not a writer, I'm just, I guess I'm a performer, but I feel creative. I feel I need to be around people. I like it now. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop.
Sound of a wheel, the colors you breathe, the voice of movement, the sound that reads, learn the words, all else fails.
6 months, but I feel adventuresome. I don't think I'm just going to stop, sit down. I don't necessarily mean singing, or I'm not a lecturer, I'm not a writer, I'm just, I guess I'm a performer, but I feel creative. I feel I need to be around people. I like it now. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop.
Sound of a wheel, the colors you bring, the voice of movement, the sound that rings, learn the words when all else fails.
last 6 months, but I feel adventuresome. I don't think I'm just going to sit down. I don't necessarily mean singing, or I'm not a lecturer. I'm not a writer. I'm just, I guess I'm a performer, but I feel creative. I feel I need to be around people. I like it now. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop.
Sound of a wheel, the colors you bring, the voice of movement, the sound that rings, learn the words when all else fails, transform and change. The winds prevail, transform and change. The winds prevail.
Hello, loved ones.
Hello,
Hi,
baby.
Elizabeth. Hi, Alexis and Walidah. We are so excited to
Hi.
be bringing you all this Writing New Worlds plenary. I personally have been looking forward to this for a minute, and I am so excited to be able to help hold the space for this conversation that is necessary and refreshing and has been a joy already. And so I just wanted to let folks know that the context for this conversation, as it's described, I got to describe it, and I was inspired by Toni Cade Bambara. Oh, my name is Alexis Pauline Gumbs, also known sometimes as Sister Doctor, and that's my name on the screen, she and they pronouns. And Toni Cade Bambara is the person who inspired the language behind the description for this particular plenary. After the wonderful Nadine on the AMC team asked me if I would steward this, I was like, okay, what's going to happen? And then when I knew that it was going to be a conversation between the three of us, I was like, and I feel like Toni Cade Bambara was just like, great, I want to play, like I'm in here in an ancestral way. And I feel like Toni Cade Bambara, who, for folks who don't know, was an incredible writer, filmmaker, self-identified cultural worker, was like pre-AMC visionary because her work was grounded and accountable to the people. And she was all about the work of creating a culture where we can be free. And some of the language that came up is the idea that the role of the revolutionary artist is to make revolution irresistible, which Toni Cade Bambara said. Also, the idea, which I learned from Aisha Shahida Simmons, that sister is a verb. And these are phrases that I feel like my co-interlocutors today fully embody. And so I just want to say a little bit about each of you and let the folks know who you are in your power, and also why I'm so personally grateful for each of you. And in my mind, these are praise poems, but that was going to take a very long time. But I'll just say the title of the praise poem, the extemporaneous praise poem for you, Alexis Veaux, is called Irresistible, because you absolutely have been making transformation and revolution irresistible, sexy, inviting for decades. The fact that we're having this conversation, which I know the three of us think of as like a living room conversation that the world eavesdrops on with our consent, is very much in the legacy of the Flamboyant Ladies salons that you and Gwendolyn Hardwick held in your home for so many years. Your commitment to, even though you were published early on by some of the most major publishing houses, your commitment to also have autonomous and independent publishing and art making be part of your work throughout your career also is very much aligned with the values of the Allied Media Conference. And goodness, I mean, Warrior Poet, your biography of Audre Lorde has changed our lives. Most recently, the award-winning Yabo has just allowed us to time travel in ways that are so exciting. But I have to also say that part of the way that you have made revolution irresistible to me is by actually embodying it and putting it out there in a way that I could recognize, even with my own name attached to it. The first time that I was sitting in the Lesbian History Archives and I saw a flyer for a Flamboyant Ladies event. And you know what the logo looked like for the Flamboyant Ladies. It's like big hair, big earrings. And I was like, it's a picture of me and my name on it. Like it was impossible to ignore the affirmation and invitation that your very life has been. And as my father says, my parents didn't know it at the time, but they were always naming me after you. So I just love you. Thank you for making revolution irresistible to me personally and to so many people who are watching right now. And for those who are just finding out, oof, yes, it's on. And I also want to honor and acknowledge you, Walidah. The name for this extemporaneous praise poem is Sister is a Verb. And I say that because I feel this incredible sisterhood with you, but I also see running through your work, through your performance poetry as the bad sister half of Good Sister, Bad Sister, Bad Sister, Good Sister, y'all both there together. Good Sister, Bad Sister, when we first met, which I think was in 2004, at the Anarchist People of Color Conference in Asheville, North Carolina. Your sense of lineage and family, the oral history work that you've done with so many revolutionary elders, the sistering in terms of your work to bring voice to your adopted brother's story, but also the story of so many prisoners in Angels with Dirty Faces, just your incredible poetic bravery and the way that it's always in relationship. Like when I see what you're doing, I'm always so inspired about the way that it's useful right then. It's created in collaboration with the communities where you are in Oregon, but also the communities that you understand that you come from in terms of especially revolutionary Black folks all over the world. I'm so grateful for your sisterhood in my life. And when you and Adrienne invited me to write visionary fiction for Octavia's Brood, I was not ready. I didn't feel even ready to say yes, but of course I did say yes because it always has benefited me to say yes to you. But it completely changed my relationship to my own writing and allowed me to see that it wasn't only that which I found in the archive that I could offer, but my imagination was just as curious as my seeking into the past. And I really do believe that this is what sisters do. We see in each other a possibility and we lovingly offer it in a way that we can actually step into. And that is what you have done for me. And I'm so grateful. And I just love y'all both so much. And I could talk for 90 minutes about the reasons why. But that's not what the people came to see. They came to hear us talk together about writing new worlds. So what's about to happen is we're going to talk, and we each have come with questions that we're very excited about. And I would ask you, Alexis Veaux, if you would start with anything you want to say, and then your first question for our conversation.
Thank you. I'm just so honored to be with the two of you this afternoon. I mean, it's like we are actually time traveling in an ability to be in these different physical geographies and also be together. It's such a Star Trek moment for me, and I'm so excited by it. I'm really excited. And I want to remind us, you reminded us, Alexis, to say who we dedicate this moment to.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So why don't we I'm going to throw it back to you. So you can say who you
Okay.
dedicate this moment to, and then Walidah, and then myself, and then I'll pose the first question.
Oh, that makes so much sense. I love that. And
Hmm.
thank you for mentioning Star Trek. I know Walida was like, yes, like uber Trekkie fan. I'm raised by a Trekkie. My mom is a Star Trek Next Generation, just passionate
Absolutely.
person. Um, and thank you for reminding me because I just was so excited that I didn't even do that. So actually, for the three of us, that for everybody who's watching, we want to invite you to dedicate your participation in this conversation to somebody who is not in real time part of this conversation that you know of, but who is part of why you showed up for this. So whether you're watching on the AMC site, whether you're watching on Facebook Live or on YouTube, or whether you're one of the three of us that's right here, just to think about someone who you're dedicating your participation to. Maybe they've been especially on your heart, on your mind. Maybe they're part of the reason that you want to write new worlds. Maybe there's somebody who's older than you, younger than you, living now, lived before. It can be anyone you want. So I'm going to take a deep breath to leave a moment for y'all all to think of who you're dedicating to. Yes, I needed that breath. And I am dedicating my participation to the great Cheryl Green, who is looking at me. I have a photo with her in it that's sitting on my desk facing me right now. She was and is an incredible editor, worked for many years for Essence Magazine, was one of the people who was responsible for so many important books, too, especially for Black liberation, including Assata Shakur's autobiography, for example. And she has personally been a mentor to me since I was a teenager. She's now in the ancestral realm. And she also is a person who connected me with Alexis Veaux, because they collaborated together to create an incredible series of transnational Black feminist works in the, some would say, unlikely pages of Essence Magazine at a time when it wouldn't have been imaginable, except they imagined it. And so it's an example of writing new worlds. It's an example of sistering that absolutely has informed my life. And yes, I'm here with some of Cheryl's books right with me, and I'm dedicating my participation in gratitude to her. And Walidah, could you share next?
Sure. Yeah, and I'm so honored to be here and so excited to share this visionary space and to just kick it with y'all in public. We're kicking it, but we're also in public. Um, but for me, definitely thinking a lot about Octavia E. Butler, and I have a little frame picture of her behind me, and so just thinking so much about her impact on my understanding of new futures. The fact that I feel like that was one of the first times reading her work when I was still in high school that I felt like I had both permission and a North Star as a Black woman to imagine myself into these futures and not just imagine my presence, but imagine my agency and my ability to create change, whatever happens. And I feel like, that Octavia's Brood, which grew directly out of my understanding of Octavia Butler's work, has brought so much, has definitely, I feel like, made revolution irresistible for me and has created so much sistering through everyone involved in the project who identifies in that way, and then so many connections that are still being made every day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So I want to um, say before I determine who my participation is dedicated to, I want to thank you, Alexis, for curating this moment and for taking the important and brave steps of understanding the threads between all of our works and ideas and beings and conversations, the multitude of each of us, and
Mm,
weaving that together into this plenary. Um,
mm,
I don't know that it would have happened if you had not stepped up in the way that you did with such grace and joy and humor and respect and just high intelligence, high intelligence. So, so everything to you.
Ooh,
yeah.
And
I love you. I receive it.
thank you. Love you back. Love you more. So, I would like to dedicate my participation in this conversation this afternoon to the historical Black she, those
Mm,
individuals, irrespective of gender, who identified with, embraced, wore as clothing, and assumed the locations of Black and female in the so called New World.
mm,
And their feet are my feet today. And
mhm,
my breath is their breath.
mm,
So I have learned that, and I have to honor all of them and include my grandmother and my mother and so many beings who have claimed the space of Black and female who are no longer living on this earth, but who live in the aura and the atmosphere of this earth.
mhm. Yes, thank you.
So, let me begin with a question to you, Walidah, and to you, Alexis, and to myself, because I've heard, I think each of you say this word vision or visionary in our opening comments, and I want to begin by asking us, how did we arrive at the term visionary fiction? What does it mean? How did we arrive at it? Where is it going? Where is it taking us? Or where does it want to take us? And how is visionary fiction kin to or not kin to what we have also known as Black speculative fiction?
Well, I can start us off, and
Yes.
am so appreciative of that question and the space that it opens up. Um, for me, I started using the term visionary fiction, I think maybe 10 years ago, specifically in relationship to creating a special issue of Left Turn magazine that was looking at radical science fiction. And, we kept saying radical science fiction, but I really wanted a new term that I felt encapsulated the deep connection between this fantastical art and creation and the space of organizing and revolution and change. And so we called it the visionary fiction issue. And I started molding more of my work around that. And then when I connected with Adrienne Marie Brown, my co-editor for Octavia's Brood, who also did the opening plenary last night with Autumn Brown, who is also a contributor to Octavia's Brood. Octavia's Brood is taking over the plenaries because we also have Leah Lakshmi, Gipsna, Samara Sinha, and Danny McLean on tomorrow's plenary. So Octavia's Brood take over. But I think when Adrian and I kind of joined forces and Adrian was doing work around emergent strategy, we saw the connections between visionary fiction and emergent strategy and the ways that they sort of intersected to allow us to imagine different futures and then build them into existence. So for me, as a Black woman, I think of visionary fiction as absolutely rooted in Blackness and in the experience of oppressed peoples creating decolonized dreams of the future. Visionary fiction is rooted in that. It is a space where others can come to that as well. But for me, it is not visionary fiction if we are not rooting in the understanding that those who have held the liberated dreams of the future that they were told again and again were science fiction are the oppressed and the marginalized, are Black and brown folks, and that they are the ones who dreamed impossible dreams and then changed the entire world to make them all of our lived realities. And so I don't think, Black speculative fiction and visionary fiction are one and the same, but I don't think that you can separate them out from each other.
Mm.
Mm.
Oh, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll
That
just
is a
add,
wonderful answer.
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because of course, Walida, I learned and first heard the term visionary fiction from you because you asked me to be part of that issue of Left Turn. And now I'm just realizing this in this moment. I'm like, oh, this is part of what prepared me to even be able to say yes later when you all asked me to write something for Octavia's Brood, because you asked me to interview this incredible artist, Colleen Smith, for the Left Turn visionary fiction issue. And Colleen Smith's work, everybody check out this incredible Black feminist artist who has been working in film and visual arts and is just a poetic visionary who I adore, who I met because you asked me to do this, Walidah, and now whose work is on the cover of my most recent book and who just continues to bless my life. But this idea that we could really vision to the end of what we could imagine and what we had been working so hard to achieve, like as you say, imagining every day with our organizing and our practice and our decision to be part of revolutionary movements, we could go all the way to the end of what we could imagine and then be creative there. That's what was offered to me, and I saw it as, and have continued to experience it as, a blessing in so many ways, because what it does for me is it allows me to see the limits of my own imagination, and it allows me to see whatever it is that I think I really wish would happen that would be better than this current situation. It allows me to be creative there, which then means I'm not being reactive to the present situation. I'm being expansive and going as far as I possibly can with my imagination, which also makes me rigorous with myself, right? So it's like, if everybody would just stop doing this form of oppression that I'm fighting is a reaction. But to say, what is the most beautiful thing I can imagine? And how can I be there, put myself there through my art, and then be creative all over again from there. and it's challenging. It has led to decisions in my everyday life. It has it has made me a more generous participant in the present, because I understand that I have a creative role in not just the future that we can have, but importantly, the future that we can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I would say
Mm-hmm.
that's what visualization has been for me. To you?
Mm-hmm. 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 I love the way you both have approached this. And I kind of set that up. I sort of knew what you were going to say, Walidah, but I kind of set that up to kind of draw out these important words like the decolonial project, the importance of that to imagination and resistance, as you have pointed out, Alexis. And so I won't overstate those things, but I would like to add that for me, this term that you've been critical to imagining and putting into language is precisely the idea of a Black woman making language that addresses who we are as Black diasporic peoples. I'm
Mm,
always in favor of Black people creating language. I'm always in favor of people creating language. I think English as a language is, it only gets vibrant when Black people start speaking. Because when we, you know what I'm saying, when we feel the need, we have to open it up and create some new word that is the it. That's it. That word is
mhm.
it. So we know our ability to infuse English with another English,
Yeah.
another where, or what June Jordan used to talk about was an otherwhere. She used to talk about the
Mhm.
otherwhere, the places that we can be. We're here and we can be otherwhere. That idea. So I think that that's very important. And I love that you said, Walidah, that Black speculative fiction and visionary fiction are not one and the same, but they also don't cancel each other out. What I
Mhm.
what I particularly like about the construct of visionary fiction is the movement towards the decolonial project, to decolonizing the power structures around Black and Brown diasporic lives. That I think
Mhm.
actually is an important distinction, if you will, between Afrofuturism and a lot of what is popularly known as speculative fiction. The notion of the decolonizing project, because that really sets a particular tone in terms of looking at narratives of resistance. And I'm going to um, not use the term history right now, because I think that term often suggests a back there or a before or something that no longer is. And I'm actually trying to, how do you say? I'm actually trying to wean myself off of some of this language.
Yeah.
A vision or the vision or to envision. Um, and I like that both of your comments did not suggest the word hope. And the reason why I like that is because I have begun lately to wonder about the term hope. Is
Mm.
it a is it a passive term? What has hope to offer us now? Is there some other way that we can think? Maybe we need to think in more active terms like vision, which means to see, or envision, which is the act of seeing and therefore doing. So I really appreciate that in constructing this language, you both have also allowed for the likelihood that the language that we're using and we're going to use has to have a more active component. And some of the language strategies that we've used in the, up until like right now, wasn't going to say the past, but up until like right now, may be more questionable as strategies. For example, hope.
Ooh,
Mhm.
this is
Yeah,
so
I think
exciting.
that's so powerful. I think that, that framing of, that so often when we talk about hope, I think to me it's so tentative, right? It's something where we're reaching out. We don't know if we'll be able to even like catch just a taste of it. And
Mhm.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And for me, I think the power of visionary fiction, that combination of the imaginative, the speculative, rooted in community organizing and revolution, is that we know that we can change the future because we've done
Mhm.
it again and again and again.
Again and again.
And
Mhm.
so I think just what you're saying, I want us to claim the future with the same certainty that we claim, as your not history, but the what came before.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I also, that we're attempting to claim the present with that same
Mhm.
certainty. And
Mhm.
you know, I think that's also, I mean, I'm so excited to be sharing this space with y'all for so many reasons, because of your brilliance, your creativity, your innovation. And I think the way that I feel like all of our work sort of sees naturally Blackness as time travel or as time subversion. The
Mhm.
way that we go, you know, back and or recognize we're not even going back, that it's right next to us, but that we are able to reclaim or re-envision what has been, and you know use that in active embodiment in the present and for the future. And so I really think a lot about the past, especially as Black folks, because not only do we have to reclaim it, we do have to reimagine it sometimes, because so much of these stories have been purposely obliterated. And so I think there's a sadness to that, but there's also a power to that, because we bring ourselves into that reimagining as well. We infuse what was with ourselves to give it life. And I think that's a
Mhm.
huge
Mhm.
responsibility and a sacred
Mhm.
one. And it's
Mhm.
one that you both have done and are doing so beautifully and poignantly. So I guess we're thinking about the future, but I think we're also being like, time is a construct. So what
Mhm.
lessons
Mhm. Mhm.
what lessons from y'all's work holding what has been, and as especially as Black people, as Black she's, can we and do we need to build the futures we want?
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm. Yeah. You want to speak to that first, Alexis?
Okay. Um, well, just to sort of tag on to a bit of the earlier comments, and by the way, my mind is already blown up with y'all, and we're only like 15 minutes in, and I'm already like, so. Um, I think one of the things that's evolving in my work, I'm not sure I would have said this 20 or 30 years ago, but I can say it now. One of the things that's evolving in my work, in terms of what we have called the past, is to understand precisely this idea of the absence of time in our memory. so that I'm really working to not so much reconstruct and retell or particularly reimagine the past, but to be able to tap into memory in ways that communicates our narratives. And if the narrative is about being a runway, which we would also call a runaway, but I call a runway. If the narrative is about being a runway at a particular point in the story of Blacknesses, then that is still true. There's still runways. There's still people who are running away from. We are still running away from. Maybe in different ways, utilizing different strategies, but we are still runways. So, and it's like, Saidiya Hartman talked about this idea of the afterlife of slavery. So we can't talk about it was and it no longer is, because we're still in it. We're still in it. We are still enslaved by the structural injustices that created the moment for Saidiya Hartman to understand and then to articulate for the rest of us. This is the afterlife of slavery, what we're living through now. So it's not over. It had a life and it also has an afterlife, or what I call the death life. So I'm less interested in sort of picking through the past, which is viable. It's a viable strategy for writers, for artists. But I think I'm less interested in that as a project than I am in the memories that we need to attach to the present reality. The present is still the slave ship. It's still the slave ship. It is the slave ship in different forms, but it's still the slave ship. So how do we connect then what we think of as these lost narratives or lost historical facts or voices that we no longer hear? Actually, we still hear those voices. Well, I should say I still hear them. In fact, I hear the ancestors very loud these days. Very loud. I mean, really loud. So if that's true for me, then I can't have a sense of them being not present, because they are.
Yeah. Oh, that resonates so much with me. I hear the ancestors right now and at all times. There's something. So I had the great opportunity, or have had the opportunity, to ask Barbara Smith a zillion questions, and it occurs to me, Alexis, when you said the slave ship is now. One thing that Barbara Smith, and if folks don't know, Barbara Smith is also a Black feminist icon, is one of the founders of the Combahee River Collective and Kitchen Table Press, and absolutely an unstoppable media maker for our freedom. And what's interesting to me is, so she said that enslaved people must have been organizing while in the enslaving ships. And she said, how do I know? Because we still exist. So the capacity to organize, even in a situation, horrific context, like the hold of an enslaving ship, the evidence of that capacity, that Black organizing capacity, is our very lives, which I feel is very in alignment with what you were saying also, Walidah. And I think about my relationship to lineage as how I think about your question, Walidah, and I think about you, Alexis. I think about what it meant for Barbara Smith to just insist that certain texts would stay in print and like proliferate them to so many different places, because, and this is not her alone, but that entire impulse, those texts and exactly those forms of evidence in order to be present with that lineage. So I guess at the same time that I think about the persistence of the context, I feel that my role is really about facilitating our presence to that transformative lineage. And I feel like that's my role because I'm obsessed. I am full of longing. I'm full of desire and love. Like I want to have been there. I want to have been there, Alexis. I mean, I've been in your living room salon, so still having the living room salon. But I want to be at the first one. And I love imagining what was it like, like what did it smell like, what did people have on? Because I feel that I was present in that moment, even as like an imagination or as a dream. And I feel loved by that. And I feel that there's a way that the moment that we're in now also has that accountability, where there are those dreams that we're having that will be looking for the evidence of this, because we're calling them right now with what we're doing, what we're saying, what we're leaving, what we're changing, the energy that we're putting out. And so that's how I think about this idea of time travel, that there's something so loving about it. And I do spend a lot of time quite literally picking through the past. I spend a lot of time sitting in archives, literally reading every piece of correspondence, however trivial it may seem, from Black feminist writers and folks who are involved in Black feminist publishing and organizing. And that does come out of the fact that that's a portal. Those physical items to me are sacred, and they have the power to translate energy and to bring me clarity about what that moment was already calling for, that I'm accountable to right now, because it is all now. So I think about it in that way. And I think about how much I love the possibilities. I love to look at the things that didn't happen. Like I love to look at like Toni Cade Bambara at the 1988 Essence Black Women's Writers Retreat, which was organized by Cheryl Green, who I dedicated my participation to. She was like, we should create an anthology, and it should be everything. It should have poems, it should have stories, it should have recipes. And she was doing this with her hand, because I watched Cheryl's copy of the video. And it should have star maps, and it should have legislative proceedings. And she kept saying all types of things. And everybody was sitting there like, poems, stories, okay, recipes. And then it was like, and what? And that particular project did not happen within Toni Cade Bambara's lifetime. But I love going to that moment, because I understand that it's not that everything we call into being is to be owned by us as individuals in this lifetime. or even as collective participants in a particular organization or at a conference or in a moment, it's actually every time that's another portal that opens. And we can go live in those portals anytime. If we just know that it was there, if we just sense it and believe in it, and this is what visionary fiction has taught me, if we can even imagine it ourselves, we can travel there and come back through to this moment through that energy. So I think about it that way. I think that's my lust for the archive. That is my constant wondering. And it's like, it feels generative to me to want something that I know is going to always cause me to be creative, because I can never fully have it. You know, like I won't have the experience of being like this person and being at the first flamboyant ladies living room salon. But the desire for it is generating such a beautiful life for me right now. You know, like it's generating this conversation, for example. So I'm really grateful for that. And I
When
guess,
I'm combining, oh, sorry.
oh,
I
please,
was just
please go
gonna
ahead.
I think the echoing of the two thoughts that Alexa, well, I guess I have to specify which Alexis, but Alexis DeVoe, that idea of memories, and then Alexis Pauline Gumbs, your idea. I mean, you have become, in a way, a part of that memory, right? You are now an active participant, and you know you're kind of like a receptacle for that memory, but in a living way. You're not a cold, lifeless container. You are or an organic holder of this memory, because you have seen it, or you have read it, or you have witnessed it. And so, you know you're adding your own breath to it to give it more life, but it's also sort of infusing itself into you as well. So it's that multiplicity of transfer. And I think that piece is one of the things that I really think is an important part of visionary fiction, but of any liberatory movement, is challenging linear time as a one-way street. And instead, because nobody, black or brown, ever believed that. None of us thought anything like that until Western capitalist imperialism came along and said, we have to commodify time. We have to stake it to the ground. We have to stretch it and measure it and then hold it there. That idea, I think, that is so powerful in what both of you are saying, and the work you live, is recognizing time is fluid, and is not only can flow backwards and forward, but is doing so at the same time. It's moving in all directions at the same time. And I think, kind of seeing that moving forward, Alexis Pauline Gumbs, you were talking about your piece in Octavia's Brood. And, it's so beautiful for me to hear that it has impacted you, because I think of your piece, Evidence, which is about this future that is one of the most beautiful futures that I have read or engaged with, where we have, I don't want to say one, but we have created this beautiful world that embodies so many of the principles and values that we have now. And whenever anyone says, what is your idea for the future? I'm like, have you read Evidence? Read Evidence. And now I'm like, read M Archive. Just read everything Alexis has written, and then we can talk. But I think especially for Evidence, one of the things that I love about it is your idea, because this person in the future is sending messages back to the past to tell us, you are going to get through this, and this work will not be lost. And
Mm-hmm.
it's obviously reassuring as someone in a moment that feels so uncertain to get that long view and have it say, no, it's inevitable that you will build this future. But I also think it talks about the responsibility of the future to the past as well, right? That the future doesn't just exist, it is in motion, it is in conversation, it is in relationship, and all relationship is built on accountability and responsibility in the most joyful foundation of that. And so the
Mm-hmm.
future speaking back to us and saying, we know it's our responsibility to give you strength when it seems like you are not going to make it through. And then thinking that the work that we're doing, the work that y'all have held, the work Alexis DeVoe you have held for so long is doing the same thing to those folks in the past that have given us so much. That is
Mm-hmm.
our
Mm-hmm.
responsibility to send back to them
Mm-hmm.
as well. Say,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
everything you are
Mm-hmm.
fighting for, everything you pulled down, maybe you didn't feel
Mm-hmm.
like you held it then, but you
Mm-hmm.
pulled it here and we will
Mm-hmm.
help hold it for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And I so love the way you frame that. And I would add to that, um, part of your own definition for visionary fiction, or a part of your explanation, and I'm going to paraphrase here, has to do with the notion that those we call our ancestors dreamed us and then bent reality so we could be. And this
Hmm.
idea of, again, in an absence of linear time, but this idea of the relationship between one memory and another, which creates the
Mm,
third memory, I think is
mhm,
quite powerful and very much a part of how we are each describing what we do in our work, which is reality, bending the reality of what we call before us, bending the realities of the present us, and bending the realities to come. And I know that we're going to get back to this idea of the future, talking about the future. So I'll just leave it right there.
Yeah. Well, I'll say, I think I'm realizing that my two questions are really the same question. So I'm just going to combine them. There's only one thing I want. I just want to love you. That's the only thing. It's just how many ways do I take?
Also, can I just say this is like this is the sweetest panel ever like I've ever been on. Like I'm like
Yes,
I mean,
it's a
we can
total love
have
fest.
exactly. And what I
Hmm.
mean, the world deserves
And why
love fest.
not? Yeah, and why not?
Exactly.
Right. Why not?
So and this is because this is inspired by how each of you have had a tangible impact on my writing, on the way I practice my writing. Alexis, oh, is this in arm's reach? Oh, okay. I know you write in these composition books, Alexis
Yes.
DeVoe. In my composition book, like my literal
Oh,
writing practice
wonderful.
are influenced by you. What I even imagine I could write has been influenced by both of you. And
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about our writing practices because I know that many of the people who are watching this, the people who are attracted to this AMC space, are creators. They are mediums. I always say the Media and Allied Media Conference is actually that we are all mediums, portals bringing this future through. And I think it's really useful to talk about our writing practices and our creative practices more generally, what those practices do to us and how that exists in relationship, how it changes our relationship, how it's nurtured by relationship. I love what you said about accountability, Walidah, and that it's actually an ancestral accountability and accountability to the future. And then there's our accountability in the present that is accountable to that. And so I would just love for us to have a moment to the extent that we feel like it, just opening the curtain to our writing process. It could have to do with what we're writing right now. Alexis, I
Mm-hmm.
know what you're writing right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm so excited about it. So if you want to talk about the form of the
Mm-hmm.
parable, I think it would really
Mm-hmm.
be exciting and useful to
Mm-hmm.
everybody who's watching. And Walidah, if you want to talk about what visionary fiction in the way that you do it, and even what the collaborative form and anthology form has done also in terms of your practice as a writer, as an editor, as somebody who both of you are not only just producing writing, you're actually, that's why it's called Writing New Worlds. Oh, good job, Nadine. Is that you are transforming what it is,
Mm-hmm.
what literature is, but also what it is to practice writing. So I would love to hear anything that y'all want to say about your writing practice and how it's been transformative to you in relationship.
That's such a wonderful question because for me, it actually requires me to sort of think along the spectrum of the genres that I've written in,
Mhm,
recognizing that I have written children's books, memoir, fiction, short fiction, essays, biography, poetry, and plays. So, like, it's sort of easy to say all of that, and also not easy to articulate how each of those things has been transformative. But I think what I understand about my work now and my writing practices is that my work is much more moving towards what I call the sacred, what I call Black sermonic text. Like
mm,
I am not someone who's grounded in a particular church experience, but I know the value and the need of Black sermonic texts in Black life, in the Black in narratives of Black life, and in narratives of Blacknesses. So, in that way, my practice is really more about engaging with something I'm now calling afictional philosophy. It's afictional because it's moving away from fiction and more towards what I as a writer see as a sermonic text. And a
mhm,
Black sermonic text can be a sentence as much as it can be a book.
mhm,
So I recognize that in my work now, that the sacred and the movement towards philosophy, towards trying to philosophize difference, and also trying to have a philosophy of Blackness, recognizing that that means that my work is also much more organic than it used to be. I used
mhm,
to, 20, 30, 40 years ago, I used to go to my desk, write 8 hours a day. I mean, really, and I would be spent afterwards because that was the whole orgasm right there. And that was how the work got accomplished, these long sessions in isolation, and paying for. Now my work is much more organic because it's more grounded in this notion of something sacred. So I'm no longer hoping to only create characters as I am trying to speak with spirit.
Mhm.
So spirit comes, tells me their name, what their thing is in relation to this narrative, and how to move from there. Sometimes spirit comes on the regular, sometimes spirit don't show up. And I have learned to understand that doesn't mean that I'm having something called writer's block. I've never had writer's block in my life. I'm either with the pen and the notebook or I'm not. But this notion of writer's block, I think, comes from someplace else, culturally. So, and in this effort to really have a practice around a fictional philosophy, moving away from the constraints of story and time in the narrative, has meant for me more currently that I'm working on this project. As you know, it's a project around parables. And just in terms of practice, not know at the outset that this would be about parables. I thought these were short stories, but I think there's a difference between short stories, which is part of that fictional narrative, and parables, which is has much more to do with the sacred and Black Shamanic texts. And also I discovered that I wasn't really talking about parable as a noun, like a person, place, or thing. I was actually talking about to parable, the verb to parable. And it took many, many months. I think I shared this with you, Alexis. It was several months before I even understood the definition of that, or definitions. And there are now some 12 different definitions of the verb to parable. So my process and my practice has to do with, again, philosophizing difference and of really looking at Blackness as the abolition project, not just as a racialized state, but as the abolition, as a movement towards abolition itself. And within that, trying to connect to the notion of Blackness being the dominant narrative in whiteness. Isn't that what the 1619 Project showed us? I mean, when you look across what constitutes what has become known as America, Black people and Black culture are foundational to all that. So Blackness is the dominant narrative in the Whiteness Project. Whiteness is the dominating narrative. Whiteness is the predatory narrative. You know what I'm saying? Whiteness is the thing that hooked itself up with heterosexuality and made heterosexuality normative. So for those of us who are in this current moment practicing, whether it's a writing practice or an activist practice, practicing wokeness, particularly those of us who identify as white and have identified as white, I think one of the questions here is to really discover, learn, how did whiteness become? And there's lots of material out there to read and analyze and sit with. How did whiteness become practice? Both in terms of the social contract and also in terms of the thing that is on the table right now, literature. Okay? So what gave whiteness itself, basically? And that's part of my practice as a writer, to not necessarily inform those of us who identify as white about that, but to write in ways that are, not only am I writing against something like whiteness or homophobia or transphobia or ageism or, you know, a multitude of structural injustices, but my question to myself as a writer for every project is, what am I writing toward?
Yes.
Not just what I'm writing against, because that holds me constrained by that imagination. But when I write towards, which is what I hope I'm doing, knock on wood, I hope I'm doing in the parables, writing towards, and again, not a moral lesson necessarily in the Christian notion of the parable, because I understand that Jesus had some parables and laid some stuff down for people, and the people back then was like, whoa, parable. Not like that. Not like that. Again, I'm trying to write towards a sermonic text. I'm trying to write towards, and Alexis, because you've now read at least two of them, I want you to help me think about that as you think
Mhm.
with me as I go forward. Am I creating black sermonic texts with these parables? Am
Mm.
I creating writing? Is my writing a sonic project? Is it, can it be heard? Is it heard? Is it vibrational, meaning does it have breath? Is it disturbing the air? So I guess that's a long way around, but my writing practices really have to do with not so much sitting down and pen to paper, which is where it is. I write everything by hand. I don't write by computer. That's been a, long-term reality for me. But also, how is my work then, because it's attempting to recognize a philosophy of difference, of blackness, and blackness in terms of difference, how is my work relating? Is the notion of the parable as a black sermonic text relating? Will someone years from now be able to pick up this work and relate to it? And my experience so far, I have been blessed. My experience is that my work is in relationship. It's in
Mhm.
relationship to readers. It's in relationship to generations of readers. That's a blessing for me, um, both as a writer and reader myself. So I don't so much over worry the notion of relationship, because what I have done over the course of my life has been proven to me to be a relational relationship with art and activism and a community of
Yeah.
readers and writers.
Ooh, that was a sermonic text right there. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I had to keep reminding myself. I'm like, it's being recorded. You can go back, because otherwise I would have been like, I was like, oh my God.
Yes.
Every other sentence, I was like, oh, yes, I need this. I will
Thank you.
need this later. And
Yes.
so, but I was
Yes.
like,
We
you
will
can,
all.
it is there for you.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you. Hmm.
I think just to, respond to the part of the question you specifically sort of gifted to me around collaboration and anthology, I think is something I've been thinking about a lot in this moment. And, since Octavia's Brood began, I don't think I know Octavia's Brood has changed every aspect of my life. It has changed how I create. It has changed how I imagine and dream, as you were saying before, Alexis. It has changed how I organize. It's changed how I am in relationship with people. Um, and I am so thankful for Octavia's Brood, for Octavia's Brood as its own entity separate of me, that we have all given life and breath and love to nurture, because it has gone in places and brought things that I never could have imagined. I think one of the things specifically connected to my own writing project is how incredibly collaborative every aspect of Octavia's Brood was, and the many different collaborations with folks who were like-minded, who were bringing different pieces, but that we all shared these visions of liberated futures. We all shared principles and values of how to get there. And just, I think every time I write now, I try to bring that into that space, even if I'm not actively writing in collaboration. I think, you know, the writers in Octavia's Brood, you obviously, and absolutely one of them, Alexis, were so generous with your were lucky enough to have Cherie Renee Thomas, who edited the incredible anthology Dark Matter, 100 Years of Speculative Fiction from the African Diaspora, which if folks haven't read that 2-volume set, you must go get your life right now. It is waiting for you. um, and, you know, she was so incredibly generous with her time and her wisdom, giving us feedback for each individual story, for the project, and then just speaking to Adrian and myself, you know, as Black women, speaking as a Black woman who has created an anthology and it has seen it move in the world, to just gift us that wisdom, that guidance. And so I think that process of collaboration is so incredibly important. I actually, you know, I don't want to encourage everyone to do anything because, you know, everything doesn't work for everyone. But I think that if folks have not worked deeply and collaboratively as artists with people who have a shared vision and principles, I would suggest doing it, because I think we can, you know, I can imagine what that's like, but you know, at the beginning of Octavia's Brood, I had an idea and of what it would be like, and I think I could not begin to imagine the ways that that would change and shape me, as I was changing and shaping it as well. And so that process of collaboration is incredibly important. And I think especially for artists who are trying to create change, how can we create different worlds if we are not practicing how to be different as artists in that process as well? And I think the process of creation is, you know, so as transformative, and transformative in different ways than the outcome of it. I read every story in Octavia's Brood and I am transformed by those stories, but having the immense honor of seeing that process and that process of collaboration transformed me in different ways. And so right now I'm actually feeling incredibly lucky in this moment to be working on another collaborative anthology project that's headed by Wakanda Dream Lab and Policy Link. And it's called Dreaming of Abolitionist Futures. And it is a collection of, I believe there's 13 Black writers who have been brought together, and we've shared space and we have collectively imagined a post-abolition world. And then we are writing stories within that world. And it was the project I didn't know I was needing in this moment until, you know, Calvin Williams, who has been kind of spearheading this, reached out to me and said, "Do you want to be part of this?" And I was like, oh, this is what, like, I'm being lifted by this. And I haven't even met folks yet, you know? And I think, you know, it's again the process of creating a world. It was really interesting because, you know, Alexis, you know, as part of Octavia's Brood, we created workshops, and one of them is a collective world building visionary fiction workshop. And so I facilitated that for years, countless times. And to be on the other side, first I realized I'm like, I am not an easy person to facilitate. So bless the people who attempt such a feat. But to be able to just be fully immersed in that process rather than the person kind of trying to help make sure everyone is moving through it was just so powerful. And what came out of that I think is so important in this moment is, we created this world and then we all just wrote drafts and we came back together. And what happened is those drafts naturally spanned a 500-year period, starting in 1919, going to 2419. And what it showed is that we just organically said and created this world where we saw abolition as a process, not as a destination. And so all of us had something in our story that we then began collectively calling Abolition Day, the closing of the last prison. But the story continues for hundreds of years after Abolition Day, because we were all struggling in the most positive way with the idea of, as you were saying at the beginning, Alexis, well, what comes next? How do we push beyond, what we can imagine, what we're told is possible? The idea of abolitionists, well, we don't want prisons. What happens when we get that? And what is our responsibility to the future and the present as folks who have said this is what we want? And so it has just been incredible to see the brilliance that so many Black creators, because it's a multimedia project, are bringing to this, the different visions of the future and the idea that the multiplicities of futures in one, right? The containing of multitudes, as I think Alexis Veaux said. And to just see that in a project has been so inspiring, and to see that there is space for everyone's vision in this real collaborative project way. It's one thing to say it, like there's space for all of our futures, and then it's another to actually create that space for it. And it has inspired me so much just in terms of thinking about, this on the ground organizing that is incredible and visionary and revolutionary right now, and the futures that we are pulling into existence every single day around the globe. And to just really take that long view of the future and to know it's all important. The next year is important. The next 50 years is important. The next 500 years is important. And they are all there waiting for us to connect, as someone said, as one memory to another. I think Alexis Veaux, you said that. And I feel like this project has enabled me to connect as one memory to so many other folks' memories, past, present, and future.
Oh, I'm so excited about that. So excited about that. I'm like,
It sounds amazing. I want to see that.
right?
It'll come out in
amazing.
August. It's coming out in
Wonderful.
Black August. Yes.
Well, I don't even have to wait that long. And all of us, I know everybody who's watching this is like, okay, they're typing in Wakanda Dreamland. Okay, I'm ready. Dream Lab, ready for it. Oh, this is so good. And I think this also feeds into actually the other two questions that you all have created around what it means what do we mean by future, right? We talked a little bit about how we time travel, but what do we mean by future? Alexis, I know you have been thinking about that. And Walidah, also what it means to be living in a moment that we might have thought it would take longer for abolition to be a term that is as widely used as it is in this moment because of the visionary organizing that has happened and that has been successful and that was ready and waiting when a particular moment happened. How does that even shift how we think about time when we thought it was going to be later, or when when we're faced with a future that we have envisioned. So yeah, Alexis, if you would say a little bit about this idea of future, or thinking of time beyond future, which I think is actually very related to Walidah, whatever you want to say about what it is to be living in the abolitionist present, with abolition as a shared language in a way that it has not been before.
Okay, so I want to actually put this back on you, baby, because I actually want you to say something about your work in relation to this idea of the future. Because we have Spill, we have M Archive, we have Dub, we have Undrowned that's coming out, we got Bop 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 that's coming out. So we got prolific going on here. And I want you to talk about this. Like, we've used the term a lot, future, but we haven't really said what we mean. And culturally, when we use the term future or the future, it's always gesturing towards some time or place that's far off, and that we're not necessarily going to see, view, witness in our lifetimes. And some years ago, when I was living in Buffalo, New York, I heard the Reverend Gerard Williams say, "The future is your next breath." And I remember being so arrested by that idea, that it wasn't, it was my present. It wasn't something that I potentially would never see. So let me just pose that to you in terms of the incredible body of work that you have put forward
Yeah.
already. How do you construct the future, both as part of your practice and also part of your visionary uh, strategies in terms of the kinds of literature and the subjects of your books?
And
What is
I absolutely want to second that. I'm so thankful you said that, Alexis DeVoe, because I was
Mhm,
also going to
mhm.
be like, Alexis Pauline Gumbs, what
Hello,
about
hello,
your brilliant futurism? Because
hello.
I think also, I think it's, we have values and principles and ideals, and we may even have a vague future in mind, right? Where we're saying, we want abolition, we don't want capitalism, we want communalism, we want mutual aid. But as a creator, it is a lot of work to go from that to constructing that future in a way that folks can engage with and immerse themselves in, because we are not just trying to describe what is, we are, imagining. And I think your futures are not only so beautiful and so compelling, but so visceral. And so how, I think, just as Alexis DeVoe said, but just that work and practice of making, that idea of making, the quote you started with from Tony K. Bambara, making the revolution irresistible. You are also doing this incredible work of making the future tangible, which I think is such important work to be done. And I think it's a key part of us being able to get to that future. But as creators, it is hard because we live here. And so, how do you do this amazing work of making these beautiful futures tangible?
Mhm, mhm.
Oh, I almost got away. If it wasn't for you pesky geniuses. Um, I thank you. Thank you for asking me to do that explicitly, because I could listen to you all for days, and I want to, and I love to. I will say that the my writing practice is daily. It is a core commitment. It really is a spiritual practice. So I would say that any books that I have published or will publish are very much artifacts and evidence of a ceremony that's going on. You know, like they're the part of it that can be shared.
Mm.
And so, you know, helpful, nice artifacts don't emerge every day, but the practice happens every day. I would say that's something that I want to say about my writing practice, because people do sometimes ask, like, how can you put so much out there? And I'm like, well, it really is a byproduct. Like, it's like if I'm gonna work out, there's gonna be sweat. It's the sweat, you know. And that could sound a little gross, but you know, there's a way that what I know that I need to do as an artist, making the revolution irresistible in the legacy of Toni Cade Bambara, is I need to wake up and create this day. I need to do that first. So before I know what happened, because of what happens on the news and what comes through the social media, before I even engage with my loved ones or with whoever I'm collaborating with, I actually have to create first and live inside of that. And it's a rigorous practice, because for me, when I wake up and it's still dark, and you know, sometimes I can see some planets. I've been seeing Mars and Venus out my window these early dark mornings this week. And I have to also not judge what comes through. You know, often I write things and I don't understand it. And sometimes, you know, there's stuff I'm still reading it and I'm like, oh, you know, like I'm still learning what it really means. But what I will say is what I started to notice when I was writing M Archive, which was coming out of a daily practice sparked by M. Jackie Alexander's work, and particularly questions from her book, Pedagogies of Crossing, which I highly recommend to everyone. I started to see that even though the scenes were, you know, some of them were literally, hopefully, out of this world, you know, on a planet of sulfur, we're with somebody and her heart is turning to coal to then turn to diamond. And that's what I saw. And I didn't have to be like, well, how does this apply to our political, you know, like I didn't think about what does that mean? How do I relate that in a linear way? I don't even do interpretive work with it. I just allow it to be. And what I started to see is that little pieces of what I wrote every day while I was writing M Archive would show up before the day ended. So the day that I wrote about the planet of sulfur and the heart, this beautiful black heart that was turning to coal, turning to diamond, I literally walked into an art gallery and there was all this white, beautiful sculpture, and then there was a black heart in the middle of the thing, like just met me like that. And I was like, okay. So ultimately, I think that what my practice is a faith practice of believing that through my creative practice, I can tap into all time and prepare myself for the ethical responsibility of being in this day, noticing and looking at this day in a way that I wouldn't get from just reacting to what is filtered through the media, but has to come from a different form of tapping in that I see as spiritual. And that process is a self-loving process. And what I've found is that it generates spaces and artifacts that other people can engage them, and they feel loved by it. They feel invited to tap in to their knowing, to their intuition by it. And that is because that's what I have to do in order to be able to do it. So I would say that that's briefly what what I noticed myself doing. And so, oh my goodness, Time flies when you're fully in love. We've got a couple minutes. I just wanted to start saying thank you because I have about an hour of thank you to say.
Mm.
But I want to thank both of you for saying yes and given all that is happening, all that you are doing in your lives, that you prioritize this conversation means so much to me. I know it means so much to everybody who is watching and receiving and engaging, and I think probably saying ashe and amen and pounding on stuff wherever they're at. And I just want to, in this last minute, if there's any form of gratitude you want to express, this is that minute.
Well, I'm so thankful to you, Alexis, as Alexis DeVos said at the beginning, for envisioning and dreaming this up and for bringing us into this space. And I'm so thankful to the Allied Media Conference for having this, and even more just for existing. I mean, I think that piece, Alexis DeVos, you were talking about the future is your next breath. To me, when I think of I think a lot about pulling the future into the present, the future not being far off, but something that can be literally now, we can embody now. I think often of the Allied Media Conference because I think that, to me, every time I have gone has been us living those futures we want, even if it's just for 5 days. We pulled the future into the present at the Allied Media Conference and lived that, and we can keep doing that again and again. And so I'm just thankful for this conversation, and I'm thankful to be having it here in this space. And I'm thankful for both of y'all.
Yes. Love you both.
Okay, 2 seconds. We have 2 seconds. I'm happy that we can write not what is, but write what is possible.
Ashe. Ashe.
Bye-bye.
Infinite love.
Love you.
Gratitude.
Love you
Thank
both.
you.
Love you.
And thank you to everyone for watching.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you for this amazing moment. Bye-bye.
Call the trees, call the stars, bring them out. Here they are. Learn the words when all else fails. Their sirens wail. Who will prevail? Their sirens wail. Who will prevail? The dark takes root and stands up tall. I hold my breath, afraid to fall. The words when all else fails. Through the storm, who will prevail? Step into the storm, who will prevail?
Well, I'm still a little numb at the moment from the past 6 months, but I feel adventuresome. I don't think I'm just going to sit down. I don't necessarily mean singing, or I'm not a lecturer, I'm not a writer, I'm just, I guess I'm a performer, but I feel creative. I feel I need to be around people. I like it now. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop.